Good evening. I guess it's 5:45, Friday, Bangalore, and I see ABNV as one of the sponsors. So I'm stopping most of you from probably the next agenda for the evening, right? So I'll be short. My talk will be relatively easy, but at the end of the day, I want most of you leaders, part of the Indian analytics industry, to go and kind of ponder. Yeah. So a lot of stuff has already been talked about how Indian analytics industry, how GCC have evolved over the last 10, 15 years. And I've been part of that journey. In some sense, I'm prehistoric, right? So when we started, right, we talked about 10, 15 years back. It was, the work used to be fairly simplistic, right? You used to have data management where you used to typically write SQL and PL SQL and ProC and all that stuff. You had business and power analysis, which you typically do with Excels of the world. And then you had BI like Cognos, business objects, OBIE, MicroStrategies of the world. And there was some component of predictive analytics, which typically someone would do in SAS and SPSS of the world. And that meant the industry was looking for something very simple. And that meant the GCC or the Indian industry was primarily trying to fix basic skills, trying to fix basic capacity. And in the process, what you would do is looking for core data issues, core post-mortem analysis. And partners came into play, primarily playing capacity game, right? And GCC was mainly about cost arbitrage, cost centers. So I would probably say 10 years back, GCC, rather than being a capability center, they were capacity centers or cost centers, right? Now things have changed, right? In the last 10 years, things have changed dramatically. World has evolved, and how it has changed. In some sense, a lot of organizations in the past would focus on body shopping, staff augmentation, contract to hire. They would also look at a lot of candidate interviews to basically look for the right candidate because they didn't want to fail at the first go. And in the process, we are trying to manage individuals and cowboys, as I like to call them. And that's evolved over a period of time. And in fact, the previous roundtable did talk about that, right? From a GC's perspective, it has all become value. Now, again, just reiterating what has happened, the whole ecosystem of analytics industry has changed, right? It is now AI, data science. It's all about cloud enablement. It's about ML engineering, ML ops, DevOps, data engineering, platform engineering. So it has become much more intricate and much more intertwined with each other. So at this point of time, you can't say that I'm only a data scientist. You need to know a little bit about DevOps. You need to know a little bit of ML ops, ML engineering. You need to know a little bit of the engineering service as well. So it has become fairly complex that way. And in this world, right, where the technology is evolving so fast, the traditional model of working in an industry has to change, right? And it has happened in the sense that the last 5, 6 years. One of the key changes that I have seen is that the whole concept of chief analytics officer, chief data officer has become more and more predominant. And these guys are coming in not to basically build a capacity. They are coming in to build a ecosystem, drive value. They need to be relevant for their organization, right? Whether they are part of CIO organization, COO organization, or CFO organization. Second is there's a huge demand supply mismatch that has happened over the years. Now that also means that there are a whole bunch of startups which are sitting outside, and they are actually sucking in a lot of those talent. Now with that, it means that you have to have a different strategy for talent management. Now another thing that is happening is the problem statements are changing. And with the problem statement changing, the solutions are becoming much more complex. And with that, the cloud is coming into play. Now, data professionals, they are today pampered for choice, right? You can't just say that, it's about salary or it's about a brand that they're working in. They are basically looking for what kind of work I'm doing, right? They are looking for the perception, right? Am I working on behalf of XYZ for someone else? And basically they say, staff augmentation play, or they say, cost play rather than a value play, yeah? There's also, in some sense, a lot of times we were looking for superstars. A lot of times you'll see that we need full stack developers, right? In my opinion, full stack developers are a myth. It's basically if you're trying to find a needle in a haystack, right? Instead, you have to have a different strategy how to manage that requirement where you're looking for, pretty much, end-to-end capability within your team. Now, what are the changes that we want to see the Indian industry go through? Now, predominantly, we have seen, it was body shopping, pure staff augmentation. Now, a lot of you, as leaders of GCC and Indian, industry, you have obviously evolved, right? To a point where you are basically saying that, it's a COE, it's a pod, it's a tribe kind of structure. I'm not looking for now bodies. I'm looking for people who can cohesively come together and build certain solutions for me which can drive value for me. The second thing that was basically was happening was contract to hire. I still see some of that still happening, but I think more or less most of the GCCs and Indian companies have evolved. So it's now become more like, partner with the whole ecosystem. Whether it's your talent management partners, whether it is your analytics vendor partners, it's all about, how do I, collaborate rather than compete. The sense of fear that used to happen, right? What if I work with them and they hire my team? Because then I become a staffing agency. That has to change, and that is changing. A lot of organizations have changed. But this is basically what is, basically it will drive value for the industry, right? Whether it's GCC or whether it's an Indian industry. The third piece is candidate interviews. And this is a big, I think it creates some kind of, perception among the people who are getting interviewed. So they have joined a company, right, for a particular skill set. Now they are getting multiple rounds of interviews post that. Now instead of that, that means you are basically looking for that superstar. Instead of that, leave that responsibility to the ecosystem that you are working with, right? Let them manage the talent, let them manage the deliverables, let them manage the timeline, rather than, choosing those superstars which are, again, difficult to find. And it's becoming more and more difficult as we, tread this path. Next is, managing individuals and cowboys, right? You're talking about, the superstars, right? Now, this is where, again, I'm saying you have to have the trust in the ecosystem. Ecosystem has evolved. In the last 10 years, the organizations have grown. They have, mastered the art of finding the right talent, training them up, giving them the right experience, right exposure, and making them domain expert in some sense. So therefore, not actually, managing those individuals, you basically manage the partners. That's the change that, is evolving, and a lot of organizations have started doing that. But I think that's the way to go, because otherwise the scalability will become a challenge for organizations. Then, in the past, obviously, cost and speed was the focus, but now it's all about, value and innovation, right? And this is very important because if you are trying to drive value and innovation, you need to take the whole ecosystem along with you. It can't be that, I am driving value and innovation for my stakeholders within the organization, but I don't expect the same from my partners, right? So that's a big change of mindset that needs to happen, where you should start expecting value and innovation from your partners as well, because then it's basically bottoms up, rather than just, just talking about value and innovation within a limited capacity or in a contained way. Yeah. Finally, people have to move from peoples and operations executives to become more like change makers and value creators, right? So what we want is everybody in the industry, right? Each one of us have to start thinking, is this activity valuable for my organization? What kind of value I'm driving? Am I able to move the needle in terms of dollar value, whether it's cost, revenue, efficiency, or anything, right? The thinking has to change, because earlier we were just basically 10, 15 years back, we were basically doing a task. Rather than today, we have to actually talk about what value each of us are creating. So, what it was 10, 15 years back, it was global capability center, cost center, capacity center. I think the term of GCC needs to change, right? It has to be either become a global value center or global innovation center, because, that's what will, give a strategic view of from the top that these are value creators, these are innovation centers rather than just a capacity or capability centers. So that's what I basically wanted to cover today, and I hope that gives some kind of background as to where the industry is moving and where probably we have to move. Some have moved long way, some are still in that journey, but this is just a thought that I see, I expect from the industry to take the Indian industry forward. Thank you. Thanks a lot.